Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance, you're in the house. It's just you and I today. Good to see you, my friend.
Sounds good. A lot of interesting things going on, Bob.
We were sitting down, and we always sit down and say, okay, what are we going to cover? And we say, we don't have much. And by the time we're through, we go, we have a lot of stuff to cover.
Absolutely.
So we respect your time. Thank you for joining us. Please bring your questions, and we'll supply whatever answers we can. And number one, June 30th, 9 months through the fiscal year, 6 months through 2021, 6 months removed from 2020. How are we doing?
Bob, I'm going to be surprised if we don't have a pretty strong yes response here.
Yes,
and
I don't have access to the numbers. I'm going to say 2/3 say yes. Let's see.
Yeah, because if you look at the SBA production numbers, they
give me a cookie, Lance. Go ahead.
Yeah, SBA lending activity is very high, and as a result of that, I would expect most people hit their goal in June.
Yeah, and that's good. And for those of you who are under,
you still have time.
You still have time, and there's plenty of there. So, wow, I know you don't believe me, but I can click on that to see what the answers are, but I didn't check it. Hey, this is near and dear to Lance's heart. Can equity injections for closing an SBA loan be funded by overseas money?
I'm going to have to see the response before I talk, Bob.
Yeah, I'm going to do it while I'm ahead. I'm not going to guess anymore. I'm going to rely on my my laurels here. Go ahead,
Actually,
Lance.
as long as you do proper verification of the source of the funds, yes, money can come from, but it needs a little more attention to detail and documenting the source of the funds and getting statements to support the money was there for, I'm going to say on an overseas account, Bob, I would want it for a minimum of 90 days that the money is there and available in that account. Just be real careful. It can be done, but just be real careful because there are issues that could come up.
How we've touched on this a couple times, but how do the money laundering rules affect cash injection?
Bob, I don't.
You don't even want to try it. Yeah, obviously your bank has internal controls. I agree. I'm not an expert on that either, but everyone has rules you need to follow. But the answer, Lance, is yes. And as I've said, I've been to Hong Kong, and they have these things called skyscrapers, and they have something called the internet. And so,
a perfect example, Bob, is maybe you have a young entrepreneur who moved here from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And his parents are going to be the source of the equity injection via a gift letter. And they're going to wire funds from an account in Hong Kong. That can be perfectly legitimate. But like I said, you just want to make sure you get the supporting information to document that source.
Famous Hong Kong. I remember I talked to my Chinese friends, and there's a great saying. He said the people in China, they want two things. They want to get their money out of China, and they want to raise their people in the United States. So there's the interesting observation. But yeah, there are the answer is yes. However, Lance is absolutely correct with an asterisk. Follow all the money laundering rules. Follow the rules you need to do. But for SBA lending, you can get a 3-month statement from Bank of Hong Kong, and it's in Hong Kong dollars, but that's legitimate. Number 3, the CFPB will require lenders to report women and minority-owned small business recipients of loans soon. And that should be the CPFB. True. Very good. Our editorial position is we're not going to take one. We're simply going to tell you the facts. We're going to tell you what's going to happen. If you have issues with that, there's trade groups. There's a lot of people who are pushing both sides of the issue. But all that we're saying is it's going to. I believe it's going to happen. I think 75% of you are right. It's being pushed by Congress. The new CFPB director is absolutely for this. And of course, this came from the. They tried to get this in the Elizabeth Warren era, and it didn't go through. But at some point in time, it will happen. And so, there's consumer privacy issues. I mean, it's a big can of worms. But the bottom line is, I believe it's going to happen, Lance.
I believe it will too, Bob. And of course, as SBA lenders, there's a huge emphasis from SBA's perspective to get money out to underserved markets. So that's another thing, lending to female entrepreneurs, minority-owned small businesses will be an area of emphasis, not just in 2020, but in the future.
Yeah, and that's why you can argue both sides of the case on this one, but we need to demonstrate as SBA lenders that we are serving that market, and so you need access to data. I understand there's all sorts of issues in getting the data, but right now nothing needs to be done. Hopefully it's not a retroactive type of requirement because that would cause a nightmare.
Yeah.
But all your vendors are going to be in on that. SBA, of course, will adopt whatever rules they need to do on that. But it's just so happy. I just want that. And also, we didn't talk about, but the underserved areas, I think that's going to become more important with the zip codes and the geographic areas and rural areas.
Yeah.
It's just it's a data collection portal. I sincerely doubt that you will see allocations similar to what we had with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, and so much has to go to each bucket. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think they just want to know what the numbers are. I may be naive, Lance.
I doubt they'll do that again, Bob, but I do believe this is going to be an important area of emphasis and probably will be an area that SBA and SBA lenders will be looked at. Yeah.
Very good. The last poll question we have, since I lost my script, how did the numbers look?
Hmm.
97% are correct. Numbers are going through the roof. And that's one of the things we were talking about is, Lance, I'm going to ask you to give a riff on this. Do you believe the SBA 504 refinance rules are going to be done in the next 3 months?
Well, we have been hoping for those now for quite a period of time.
Was that February?
It may not. I'm thinking it may not be released until after the end of the fiscal year. And my reasoning for that, Bob, is both 7A and 504 lending are at very high levels. It is pretty likely that the administrator will have to use the 10% rule to get us through the end of the fiscal year. So, if you open up the 504 refinance prior to the end of the fiscal year, program funding may run out before the end of the year.
Michael, go to the next slide, please. There we are, and there are the numbers, and this is basically as of 9 months. So you can see the trend is definitely upward, and this is on top of all the PPP financing that's been out there as well. So what these numbers tell me, this is not a economic crisis of access to credit. My initial assessment on this is credit has been pretty well accessible, more than accessible to the people who have needed it. Yeah, we read all these other stories. So I think that's positive. And go to the next slide, Michael. 504 is up as well. And if you ever, this is a pretty cool chart. SBA updates this every week if you want to go through it. Obviously, and I made the decision just to put the whole page up there. Obviously, you can't read it. but you can break out the programs very detailed. We were talking about, the reason why I also did this, we were talking about reporting. SBA is already reporting it based upon self-reported ethnicity groups, so that's already there. In fact, that's I think that's a little bit new format that they have, so they're ahead of the curve on that. But if you really want to look at the numbers, if you're a numbers geek like Lance and I are, it's pretty fascinating what they have. And they go back and they give you 4 or 5 years on that. So that's pretty cool. And we talked about veteran entrepreneurs yesterday, Lance. More and more I think about this. I think this is just an anomaly of the numbers. I mean, 2.3%. I don't read too much behind this other than that is a headline. I think it's sort of a non-story, but what do you think, Lance?
Well, I think coming out, something that would help this, we've had the Veterans Advantage program in the past where a veteran got a waiver on the guarantee fee on express loans up to $350. If they want to increase capital access for veterans, maybe they put something similar in place and waive the guarantee fee on all veteran associated loans.
Yeah, and I could see that. I can see SB has been very successful in molding lender behavior, as evidenced by the 2021 PPP numbers. They said, fine, instead of giving you a $500 packaging fee, we're going to give you $2,500. Well, that was certainly an incentive for lenders to go ahead and make those smaller loans. So instead of, so you do a small loan. And yesterday I went out and got a picture framed and was talking to the nice lady who's run the shop, Lance, for 25 years. Art is her passion. She loves it. And mom and pop type shop. And she said, last year was really, really tough. And so I said, well, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I know a little bit about this. Did you get a PPP loan? And she said, Lance, I did. And she named the lenders, reputable lenders. She said, but I only had 2 employees, but I have a landlord that was absolutely unwilling to negotiate with me. And if it wasn't for those little PPP funds, probably 2 people, Lance, she probably got, what, 15 grand, maybe 20 grand.
Yeah, a small loan.
Yeah, but for her, that meant the difference between keeping her shop open or closing the door.
Well, and I think that, kudos to all the lenders out there that make PPP happen. Because we have fun, Bob, talking about the fraudulent cases, and there were a number of those, but for every fraudulent case, there are thousands of cases like you just mentioned where the PPP loan was a difference in them remaining open and keeping people employed.
Right. And if that money had gone to the Wall Street banks and insurance companies and GM as it did back in 2009, she would not trickle down to her. So again, I'm fascinated by this story on the money going to Main Street as opposed to Wall Street, for lack of a better term. But my preliminary stats are, I think that was an excellent choice. And while there's always some issues, overall, it's done very, very well. So congratulations to SBA and the lenders and Congress. I think they got this one right.
Yeah, Bob, how many times have you sat back and talked about legislation and said, Congress got it right? Well, this is an area where they did. PPP, we all know there were some issues. I had somebody, I had somebody give the example, and we've all probably heard this. It's like they took off in an airplane that was not completely assembled, trying to get to an important meeting. And as they were flying to the meeting, they were continuing the assembly of the airplane.
I figured out how to land the thing. That's an excellent point. Well, very good. Lance, what are we doing? Let's see. We're going to do a webinar on July 7th on 1050. And why are we doing that? Why is that important?
Well, how you disperse the money and how you properly document the 1050 are both critically important items. especially on early default SBA loans. And as many of you know, getting the guarantee paid on an SBA loan has been something I've spent a lot of my career working on. And this is an important element of closing, an important element of documentation, and can be an important element in getting the guarantee paid.
And the reason why we're doing this, it's number one right now on SBA's hit list. They decided they really want to take a look at these 1050s and what's happening. Well, very good. Lance, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to end a little bit early, so you got an extra 5 minutes. And thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.